Hello my students, welcome back to a new psychology lesson. In this video we're gonna learn more about the psychological disorders. I'm gonna talk about the classification of psychological disorders. This classification used in this teaching material is the one provided by the American Psychiatric Association. Revised manual called the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorder. The first classification of psychological disorder is anxiety. Anxiety is a feeling of dread, apprehension, or fear manifested by physiological arousal, like increased heartbeat and perspiration, muscle tension, and rapid breathing. So that anxiety can be defined as what as your body's natural response to stress. It's a feeling of fear or apprehension about what's to come. For example, the first day of school for children, going to a job interview, or giving a speech. These may cause most people to feel fearful and nervous. Anxiety affects cognitive or cognition, making problem solving difficult. Why? Because in the case of an anxiety disorder, the feeling of fear may be with you all the time. It's intense case of this disorder, so that there will be many problems for human being. The most important thing, according to me, that you have to know there are many levels of anxiety. The first one is mild anxiety, the second one is moderate anxiety, the third one is severe anxiety. Generally, mild anxiety is the type that most of us experience on a day-to-day basis during certain situations. For example, you may have an uneasy feeling in your stomach, for example, and you may feel your pulse increase slightly or your heartbeat. Then this anxiety at this level can also be beneficial, okay? Beneficial. Why? Because it can help you to focus and increases your alertness. Now, moderate anxiety is similar to mild anxiety, but can become more severe and overwhelming, making you feel more nervous. Moderate anxiety can mean you place your complete attention on the thing or situation that's making you feel anxiety and ignore everything else around you. You may start to experience stronger physical and emotional anxiety symptoms such as muscle tension and a shaky voice, back pain, and changes in your sleep pattern. Emotionally, you may feel more sensitive and excited than normal, and you may also feel less confident. The third level of anxiety is severe anxiety, is the highest level when you stop being able to think rationally and experience severe panic. You may feel afraid and confused, withdrawn, and you may also find it difficult to think clearly. And in this kind or level of anxiety, your breathing may quicken and you may start to perspire while your muscles will feel very tense. So that we all experience moderate level of anxiety, such as writing term papers, test taking, test anxiety, and several other day-to-day problems may give rise to mild forms of anxiety. This is called ordinary anxiety. It's a feeling that comes and goes, but doesn't interfere with your everyday life. This type or this level of anxiety may motivate you to work harder and to do a better job. The first type of anxiety disorder is generalized anxiety disorder. It's a widespread anxiety that is impossible to manage by avoiding specific situations. In this kind or this type of anxiety, the person expresses a great many worries about, but cannot specifically tell the causes. For example, naturally, if you are worried from time to time, especially if your life is stressful, however, the persistent and excessive anxiety and uncontrollable confusion are signs of generalized anxiety disorder. And this kind of anxiety can be found in childhood or adulthood. Generalized anxiety disorder has symptoms similar to panic disorder and obsessive compulsive disorder and other types of anxiety, but all are different cases. Living with a GAD can be a long-term challenge. In many cases, it occurs with mood disturbances or other anxiety. And in most cases, GAD can be improved with psychotherapy or medication or by making yes lifestyle changes and learn new skills and use relaxation techniques. The second type of anxiety is panic disorder. This kind is a panic. It's a sudden attack of intense fear that stimulates severe physical reactions while there is no real danger or apparent cause of the fear. Panic can be very frightening. When a panic occurs, you may think you are losing control and have a heart attack or even die. Many people experience a panic only once or twice throughout their lives, and that problem goes away perhaps when a stressful situation ends. But if you have a frequent and unpredictable panic and spend long periods of time in constant fear, yes, you may have a condition called or a case called panic disorder. And the already existing state of tension as seen under generalized anxiety disorder reaches an acute and overwhelming. Heart begins to pound faster and breathing becomes difficult, and there are many symptoms of this disorder. The third type of anxiety is phobic disorder. When anxiety is centered or connected with a particular object or situation without any good reason, it's called phobia. Phobias sometimes develop after an initial association of fear with some stimulus. The stimulus can be a dangerous one, for example, a dog elevator, high place, or situation that carries no danger at all. And phobic disorder can be defined as an excessive and irrational fear reaction. So that if you have a phobia, you may experience a deep sense of dread or panic when you encounter the source of your fear. The fear can be of a certain place, situation, or object, unlike general anxiety disorders or generalized anxiety disorder. A phobia is usually connected to something specific. The impact of phobia can range from annoying to severely disabling. People with phobias often realize their fears are rational, but they are unable to do anything about it. Such fears can interfere with work, school, and personal relationships. Genetic and environmental factors can cause phobias. Children who have a close relative with an anxiety disorder are at risk of developing a phobia. Distressing events such as nearly drowning can bring on a phobia. Exposure to confined spaces or closed spaces, extreme heights, and animal or insect bites can all be sources of phobia. Now, the last type of an anxiety disorder is obsessive disorder. An obsession is an involuntary, irrational thought that occurs what repeatedly. Sometimes it is mild. In this kind of disorder, it can be defined as a common, chronic, and long-lasting disorder in which a person has uncontrollable recurring thoughts, obsessions, and/or behaviors, compulsions that he or she feels that there is a strong urge to repeat over and over. People with OCD may have symptoms of obsessions, compulsions, or both. These symptoms can interfere with all aspects of life, such as work, school, and personal relationships. Obsessions are repeated thoughts, urges, or mental images that cause anxiety. Common symptoms include, for example, unwanted, forbidden, or taboo thoughts involving religion or harm, and aggressive thoughts toward others or self, having things symmetrical or in a perfect order. But compulsions are repetitive behaviors that a person with OCD feels the urge to do in response to an obsessive thought. Common compulsions include excessive cleaning and/or hand washing, for example, ordering and arranging things in a particular repeatedly checking on things such as repeatedly checking to see if the door is locked or that the oven is off. Compulsive counting, for example. Look to the examples in your textbook or these slides. A person looking and unlooking a door before leaving home. At other times, it can be severe, such as the desire to burn down a house. The second type of psychological disorder is somatoform disorders. It's a resistance of symptoms that have a physical form, but in which there is no actual physiological malfunction. And it can be defined as a form of mental illness that causes one or more bodily symptoms, including pain. There are many types of this psychological disorders. The first is hypochondriasis disorder. The second is conversion disorder. The third one is dissociative disorder. Yes, if a hypochondriac has a headache, he believes it's due to some serious kidney, for example. The stomachache will be taken as an evidence of stomach ulcers or cancer. Behavioral manifestations are first reading every popular magazine concerning health because he is believing that there is a big and serious problem or a disease. Adopt difficult health routines like hours of sleep and rest. Stop eating certain foods and drinks. Consume vast quantities of vitamins and medicine, and frequently visit doctors. Then all these manifestations because of his or her beliefs about possessing a chronic illness. In other words, people with this type are preoccupied with a concern they have a serious disease. They may believe that minor complaints are signs of very serious medical problems. For example, they may believe that a common headache is a sign of a brain tumor. Another kind of somatoform disorders is conversion disorders. When certain part of the body is not functioning well, blindness and deafness and paralysis or loss of sensation with no organic problems. It's called conversion disorder. In other words, conversion disorder is when a person experiences temporary physical symptoms, right? Such as these blindness and deafness, for example, that don't have a physical cause or organic cause. There is then it will known as conversion disorder. The individual expresses some physiological problem which doesn't necessarily exist. Now, there are no hard and enough evidences to verify the causes of such disorders, but researchers believe it occurs in response to stressful situation or trauma. And it's thought that conversion disorder is a physical response to mental, physical, or psychological trauma. It's sometimes referred to as functional neurologic disorder. And symptoms include shaking, paralysis, or double vision. One example is feeling uncontrollably shaky after a traumatic event, such as witnessing a car crash, even if there is no physical reason to be shaking. The triggers are typically stressful events, emotional or physical trauma, changes in brain function. Conversion disorder may also occur when there is no clear trigger. Symptoms of conversion disorder vary between individuals and on the type of the neurologic disorder a person has. Symptoms can also be mild or severe, may stop and start or be continuous, and usually affect the body's abilities to function correctly. Now, the third type of psychological disorder is dissociative disorders. It's the dissociation or splitting of certain kinds of behavior that are normally integrated. In other words, this kind of psychological disorders involve problems with memory, identity, emotion, for example, perception, behavior, and a sense of self. Dissociative symptoms can potentially disrupt every area of mental functioning. Examples of this kind symptoms include the experience of detachment or a loss of memory or amnesia. Dissociative disorders are frequently associated with a previous experience of trauma. In a more explanation, dissociation is a disconnection between a person's thoughts, memories, feelings, actions, or sense of who he or she is. This is a normal process that everyone has experienced. Examples of mild common dissociation include daydreaming, highway hypnosis, or getting lost in a book or a movie, all of which involve losing touch with awareness of one's immediate surroundings. There are three types of dissociative disorder. The first is amnesia, and the second is fugue. The third one is multiple personality. About amnesia, amnesia is the partial or total loss of memory concerning past experience such as an automobile accident or a battle. Amnesia refers to the loss of memories such as facts, information, and experiences. Instead, people with amnesia, also called amnestic syndrome, usually know who they are, but they may have trouble learning new information and forming new memories. Amnesia can be caused by damage to areas of the brain that are vital for memory processing, unlike a temporary episode of memory loss. Amnesia can be permanent. There is no specific treatment for amnesia, but techniques for enhancing memory and psychological support can help people with amnesia and their families cope. There are main features of amnesia, such as difficulty learning new information following the onset of amnesia, and difficulty remembering past events and previously familiar information. And in the most severe forms, individuals cannot recall their names, unable to recognize their parents, and don't know their addresses. Dissociative fugue is a subtype of dissociative amnesia, but is more commonly found in people who experience dissociative identity disorder. Dissociation is generally thought of as a defense against the trauma that helps people disconnect from extreme psychological distress. Because it's a state that's a condition in which person may be mentally and physically escaping an environment that is threatening or otherwise intolerable. So that it's a psychological state in which a person loses awarenesses of their identity or other important autobiographical information, and also engages in some forms of unexpected travel. People who experience a dissociative fugue may suddenly find themselves in a place such as a beach or work with no memory of traveling there. And may find themselves somewhere in their home, such as a closet or in the corner of the room, with no memory of getting there. This travel that may occur in a dissociative fugue state can last for as little as a few hours or as long as weeks or months. In some cases, dissociative fugue can be very difficult to distinguish from sleepwalking. When the fugue state is over, people usually cannot remember what happened during the period of a fugue. The fugue state can end suddenly or more gradually with persisting confusion about identity. So on your slide, during the fugue, the individual doesn't remember the earlier life, later recalling what happened earlier might come back home. The third type of a dissociative disorder is multiple personality, split personality, or called dissociative identity disorder. Dissociative identity disorder was formerly called multiple personality disorder. People with this kind develop one or more alternate personalities that function with or without the awareness of the person's usual personality. DID is one of a group of conditions called dissociative disorder. Dissociative disorder are mental illnesses that involve disruptions or breakdowns of memory, consciousness or awareness, identity, and or perception mental functions that normally work smoothly. When one or more of these functions is disrupted, dissociative symptoms can result. Then these symptoms can be mild, but they can also be severe to the point where they interfere with a person's general functioning, both in personal life and at work. Here, look in your slide. When the usual integrity of one's personality becomes so partitioned that two or more relatively independent sub-personalities emerge, we name it multiple personality. Most normal persons show pronounced changes in style, behavior, and reactivity as they move between different social situations and different social roles. Dissociation generally is often thought of as a coping mechanism that a person uses to disconnect from a stressful or traumatic situation or to separate traumatic memories from normal awareness. It's a way for a person to break the connection with the outside world and to create a distance from an awareness of what is occurring. Episodes of this kind of disorder can be triggered by a variety of real and symbolic traumas, including male events such as being involved in a minor traffic accident, adult illness, or stress, or a reminder of a childhood abuse for a parent, maybe when their child reaches the same age at which the parent was abused. Another type of psychological disorder is mood disorder. Experiences of being happy or upset in a life are normal. In some people, however, changes of feeling are so long lasting that they affect everyday life. When disturbances in emotional feelings are so strong enough, we call them mood disorders. Mood disorders tend to run in families, thus genetic factors play a role in their occurrences. Now I'm gonna talk about two kinds of mood disorders. The first is major depression and the second is mania. Major depression, people who suffer from major depression may feel useless and worthless and lonely and may despair over the future. In other words, a constant sense of hopelessness and despair is a sign you may have major depression, also known as clinical depression. With major depression, it may be difficult to work, study, sleep, eat, and enjoy friends and activities. Some people have depression only once in their life, while others have it several times in a lifetime. Major depression also can sometimes occur from one generation to the next in families. Yes, and but often it may affect people with no family history of the illness. There are some common triggers or causes of major depression include loss of a loved one through death, divorce, or separation, social isolation or feelings of being deprived, or major life changes, moving, graduation, job change, and retirement. Personal conflicts and relationships with a significant other or a superior, or physical, emotional abuse and other causes. And depression also seems to involve the disturbances in brain activity and biochemistry, and by psychological factors such as learned helplessness. Yes, what's the meaning of learned helplessness? When a humans start to understand or believe that they have no control over what happens to them, they begin to think, feel, and act as if they are helpless. This phenomenon is called learned helplessness because it's not an innate trait. No one is born believing that they have no control over what happens to them, and that is fruitless even to try gaining control. It's a learned behavior conditioned through experiences in which the subject either truly has no control over his circumstances or simply perceives that he has no control. And learned helplessness occurs when an individual continuously faces a negative, uncontrollable situation and stops trying to change their circumstances, even when they have the ability to do so. Another psychological factors, according to your slide, is tendencies to attribute negative outcomes to internal causes and neglect active perceptions of oneself and others are also involved. The second type of mood disorder is mania. In mania, people experiencing the feeling of intense happiness and power and energy. People with manic disorder may be involved in any activity much greater than their capacity, believing that they will succeed at anything they attempt. And it can be defined as a changes from one's normal mood accompanied by high energy states. And it's called bipolar disorder. That is a complex disorder that likely stems from a combination of genetic and non-genetic factors. Now, what are the symptoms of bipolar disorder? There are many symptoms for this kind of disorder. For example, decreased appetite and or weight loss or overeating and weight gain, difficulty concentrating, remembering, and making decisions, fatigue, decreased energy, being slowed down, feeling of guilt, worthlessness, and helplessness, feelings of hopelessness, loss of interest or pleasure in hobbies and activities that were once enjoyed, including any important thing for a living. Now, the last kind or type of psychological disorder is schizophrenia. It's a general term for a number of psychotic disorders. What's the meaning of psychotic disorder? Psychotic disorders significantly affect how the brain functions by altering thoughts, beliefs, and perceptions. A person suffering from a psychotic disorder can, for example, hear voices or have the impression that others are manipulating his or her thoughts. He or she has a difficult time differentiating between perception and a reality. During episodes or events or crises, a person suffering from a psychotic disorder is said to lose touch with reality. A person with a psychotic disorder has difficulty functioning day to day, and this affects both children and adults, regardless of ethnic origin, social and economic status, and education. Psychotic disorder usually begin in adolescence or early adulthood. Now, these psychotic disorders characterized by many symptoms such as thought disturbance that may be accompanied by delusions and hallucinations and attention deficits and bizarre motor activity. Delusions mean that strange or false ideas, bizarre preoccupations or beliefs. For example, the person has the impression that his or her thoughts are being controlled by an external force, right? Delusion means also illusion, imagination, beliefs in something that isn't true, unreal things, untruth. A person with schizophrenia uh, has a feeling of these signs or symptoms. Hallucinations now mean days. The person with schizophrenia disorder has a feeling that he is a dreamer, for example, and during psychotic episodes, the person may hears one or more voices that nobody else hears. For example, sees things that nobody else sees, smells others that nobody else smells, feels unusual physical sensations. For example, has the impression that he or she is being touched by an invisible person. And a person with this kind of disorder has attention deficits, yes, deficits or short falls in his or her attention and bizarre motor activity, strange motor activities. He makes strange activities, movements, for examples, or any strange motor actions. So that schizophrenia in general is splitting in the function of mind emotion on one hand and thinking on the other. Schizophrenia has complex origins involving genetic factors, certain aspects of family structure, and biochemical factors. So that these psychotic disorders don't always have a single cause, right? No a single cause. It's often a combination of several factors that leads to signs and symptoms. These are the first here in your slides. Family structure, maybe heredity, involve genetic factors, certain aspects of family structure, and biochemical factors. And there are other factors such as alcohol abuse and the use of certain drugs, maybe stress factors in the person's life or environment. Now, schizophrenia is manifested in different forms. These are the first is disorder of thought. Thought disorder or disorder of thought is a disorganized way of thinking that leads to abnormal ways of expressing language when speaking and writing. It's one of the primary symptoms of schizophrenia. Yes, a thought disorder is one of the most difficult mental disorders to diagnose and treat, as many people accept symptoms of thought disorders occasionally. Some people may demonstrate a thought disorder only when they are tired, and they will uh, be many symptoms such as a split among various ideas or between ideas and emotions. And incoherence or dissociation in the thought persists. Concepts, ideas, symbols are sometimes put together simply because they seem similar. And the tendency to jump from one track of thought to another. Now, another form of schizophrenia is disorder of perception. It means that it is a distorted view of reality. This means that it is a discolored view, unnaturalized view of the reality. The schizoid constantly reports distortions of sensory perception, auditory, somatic, and tactile hallucinations. Auditory hallucinations or hearing voices is one of the most prevalent symptoms of schizophrenia. Hearing voices is a varied experience. It can involve hearing single or multiple voices uh, whose identity the hearer may or may not know, who speak in turn or all at the same time, who may be saying new things or repeating what has been heard before, and who can give comments or commands, insults, or encouragement. Most commonly thought people diagnosed with schizophrenia will hear multiple voices that are nasty, repetitive, commanding, and interactive, where the person can ask the voice a question and get some kind of answer. Tactile hallucinations involve an abnormal or false sensation of touch or perception of movement of the skin or inside the body. Usually, the condition causes unpleasant, uncomfortable, disturbing sensations. Some people may feel that bugs are crawling over their body or something is inside them trying to get out. Some individuals experience the feeling that their organs are shifting or that something is turning in their stomach or skull. In some cases, however, the condition may cause more harmless, even with somewhat pleasant sensations. Somatic hallucinations is a sensation of something crawling under the abdomen. Another form of schizophrenia is disorder of affect, frequently show inappropriate emotional responses or none at all. Maybe laugh when told of the death of a favorite relative. Or might get angry when given a present, face remains immobile, voice becomes monotone. And the external situation or stimulus fails to trigger an appropriate response in this kind of disorder. Disorder of affect. Flat affect, diminished emotional expression, is a hallmark symptom of schizophrenia. Although it may also affect those with other conditions, it's a lack of showing emotion characterized by an apathetic and unchanging facial expression, and little or no change in the strength, tone, or pitch of the voice. This extremely limited range of expressions occurs even in situations that would normally seem very exciting or very sad. For instance, upon hearing the great news, someone with schizophrenia may not smile, laugh, or have any joy in their response. Flat affect is more common among men than women, and is often present during the onset of schizophrenia. The last form of schizophrenia is disorder of motor behavior, performing repetitive and inappropriate behavior or acts. The schizoid might spend hours rubbing his forehead, slapping leg, or might sit all a day. Sometimes no physical activity, catatonic stupor. Catatonia means a state of psychomotor immobility and behavioral abnormality manifested by stupor. Catatonic schizophrenia affects the way you move in extreme ways. You might still totally still at mute, or you might get active for no reason. The new name of this condition is schizophrenia with catatonic features or schizophrenia with catatonia. We have thus finished our material for this semester with my wishes for great success, Dr. Hiyam Shihab.